Welcome to Annunciation Radio's Faith with Reasons, the program that examines what the church teaches and why. Faith with Reasons.
Well, welcome to it. Welcome to a Wednesday, and as we come on the air live, a little bit of rain here and there, some light rain going on. We're expecting that, I guess. We've got a great show lined up for you today. This is show number 537. We're going to be chatting with the Parish Life Coordinator, in fact, the team lead for Parish Strategic Planning and Evangelization for the Department of Discipleship and Family Life of the Diocese of Toledo. The man with the 3-pound business card, Nathan Maurer, will be joining us. I want to point out, speaking of the diocese, there's some great celebrations coming up. Coming up on Sunday, that'd be June 11th. That's coming right up here, the 27th annual celebration of Catholics with Disabilities. That'll include the presentation of the 2025 Open Arms Awards. That'll be at St. John the 23rd in Perrysburg. And principal celebrant, Most Reverend Daniel E. Thomas, Bishop of the Diocese of Toledo. So that's 11 a.m. Sunday, June 1st. And you can join Bishop Daniel Thomas again on Tuesday, June 3rd at 7 p.m. for the 2025 Homeschool Mass. That'll be at Rosary Cathedral, and it's a special celebration open to all homeschooling families. And the end of Mass, 8th grade and graduating high school seniors will be recognized. And then on Sunday, June 8th, the Diocese of Toledo's Ministry to Catholic Charismatic Renewal, inviting everyone to the Pentecost Mass and potluck reception. This will be at Epiphany of the Lord in East Toledo with Father John Peter Lazar and Father James Brown celebrating Mass at 3 o'clock, praise and worship, and a reception following. And you can get more details on that at mccrholyspirit.org. Again, that is Sunday, June 8th at 3 p.m. So there you go, and all kinds of parish festivals going on too, Shayne. So
it's that time of year.
Do you hit any of the festivals?
Haven't gotten to any yet. Although
it's early yet.
It's early. I know it was it the week before last? Sylvania had.
St. Joe Sylvania always is the first one.
Yeah.
They always kick it off first, the big Festorama.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's a big deal, especially if you're trying to drive through town, because there's always draws a big crowd. So
right,
and it reminds me of a mini fair. They got quite a few rides that are set up. It's a big deal.
It is a huge thing, and I don't know how many years in a row they've done that, but it seems like it's all I can remember every year.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty cool. I love the festival time because you get to kind of mingle with folks, and a lot of folks you don't know, and some that you do, and the food, you can't beat, festival food.
Oh, yeah. Well, so years and years ago, when I'm talking about maybe early, what it had to have been, or very early 90s, and of course, I wasn't Catholic back then, I wasn't anything, but my first exposure to Catholic festival was the festival over on Heather Downs.
St. Pat's?
It was St. Pat's. I'm trying to spit it out. St. Pat's of Heather Downs. But my memory, and it's terrible, but that was my life back then. I remember very well the beer tent.
Yes. That's always a popular spot.
Yeah. So that was my extent of festivals back then. There was another one in West Toledo. I don't remember what parish that was, and again, that was way before I'd become Catholic. But I remember that was a very festive one as well. Yeah,
and another big one that's actually coming up this weekend, I think, May 30th through June 1st, Our Lady of Perpetual Help. So OLPH there at Sherwood and the Anthony Wayne Trail. That's a big one. And Our Lady of Lourdes in Oak Harbor, they're doing one June 1st. So, they're all over the place.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I know there's a lot of parishes now that are gearing up with. I know St. Joan of Arc. We're doing another barbecue.
Oh yeah,
that'll be coming up. I think it's June 7th. That's a Saturday, and that's barbecue chicken or fried chicken, or not fried chicken. It'll be barbecue chicken and rib dinner.
Oh,
so
man, I love that.
I have to get the information for you so you can put the word out, because that's.
Yeah, anytime there's food involved at St. Joan of Arc, I am there.
Yeah.
Because, I don't know, whether it's the Knights or just the independent groups or whatever, whenever I've gotten food at St. Joan of Arc, it's always been awesome.
So I worked the fish fry, and it was a blast. It was a blast.
Mm-hmm. So we did a remote from there.
Mm-hmm. Very big turnout.
Yeah, that was fun.
So the week you were there, we were out of town, but I worked the other two. So.
See how you are?
I know.
Anyhow, I guess enough kibitzing for now. We ought to welcome our guest because, he came all the way over from the Diocese of Toledo.
Absolutely.
From the Pastoral Center downtown, which I don't know where his office will be once, they move out of that building, but maybe we'll find out. I don't know. But Nathan Maurer is
Hey, everybody.
Yeah, he's our guest on Faith with Reasons. And Nathan, as I was saying on the air, you've got a lot of things going on in your title here because you're a very busy guy. And in fact, I was looking back, I think it was back in January when we had you on last.
I think so, yeah.
So, and that's not your fault, that's my fault. But Parish Life Coordinator, Parish Strategic Planning and Evangelization, you're all part of that Department of Discipleship and Family Life at the Diocese of Toledo, and you're a team lead.
So I'm on the team. So I'm work with a lot with Andrew Reinhardt. We're under Brett Hunter-Brinker is over there. He's our director. So we got a lot of people over there on the team. I'm just grateful to be part of it all.
Right.
But yeah, a lot of team building and parish coaching is a lot of what we do.
Yeah, and last time we talked, you were kind of taking us through that process, encountering parishes and actually sitting down with the pastors. I mean, you're not just training the staff and the volunteers, but you're kind of training the pastor too, right?
Yeah, in some ways, yeah. It's a coaching relationship. So really anything that they need help with, our pastors are experts in so many things, but nobody can be an expert in everything. And a lot of people, I think, underestimate how busy pastors and, parish staff too, but I think people underestimate how busy pastors are with admin stuff and just stuff that they shouldn't necessarily have to deal with day in, day out because they went to seminary to be spiritual fathers and to feed all of us with the Eucharist and do all those things that provide spiritual direction. And we want to free them up to do as much of that as possible, which is part of what we do. And also, I mean, my particular area is evangelization and parish leadership, so I'm happy to help wherever that comes in, which obviously it goes right into what a pastor does, so any help that we can be. It's
got to be a really fun job, and I would imagine parishes are eager to sit down with you and to go over things, and it's got to be an eye-opening experience for some.
Oh, yeah. No, I think so. I think everybody that I work with, the parishes that we work with, are just fantastic. That's my favorite part of this job is getting to see more than anybody, because everybody sees the work of their own pastor. Hopefully they appreciate him. Hopefully they appreciate the work of their parish staff, their parish community. But most people don't get to a cross-section of all the parishes, or like little bits of all the parishes, right? And so you might not meet every pastor even in your deanery, or even every pastor, every priest in your county or anything like that. Most people don't. So it's just amazing to get
how vast this diocese is. I mean, when you're covering 19 counties, 15 deaneries, there's a lot of parishes.
Yeah, and even so I've been in this role a little over a year, and then I was marriage and family for a year before that, and even now I feel like there's still some priests out there that I haven't got to sit down with, which is that's one of my goals is to hopefully in the next year, that list will be finally checked off, right? Every single one, but we're making new ones every year, so that's right. That's a good problem to have, though.
Yeah, 3 new ones this year.
Yeah, exactly.
So some of our listeners may not know a deanery is basically a cluster of parishes in a particular area. So you might be looking at 5, 6, 7, 8 parishes per deanery.
Yeah, it totally depends. Some have even more than that, but there's 12 deaneries in the diocese. They were just kind of reorganized recently.
But consolidated something.
Yeah, so you have kind of like 4 on the east, 4 on the west, and then you have 4 in Toledo itself, 4 around the kind of Toledo and suburbs. So we try to get to all of them. We try to, we don't play favorites. We're driving all over the place and north, south, east, west, wherever we needed. Which I love being in the car and driving. I usually listen to some kind of a podcast about Catholic life in general while I'm on these long drives, and I'm always trying to learn more because there's so much to learn. But
yeah, there really is.
Yeah, it's good.
We can't wait to talk about evangelization. Of course, what a fantastic time to have. First of all, the loss of Pope Francis, which it's one of those things. It wasn't sudden, but it was sudden. You know what I mean? We weren't really expecting him to go just like that. We knew he was declining, obviously, but it seems like it happened so suddenly. And to have a new pope elected in 4 votes, was pretty amazing, although not unprecedented. But the election or the selection of Robert Prevost as he's taken the name Pope Leo the 14th. Really, I think, first of all, there was already I felt kind of a groundswell of people coming into the faith, not only here, but really all over the world. And do you think that our new Pope will be a catalyst for even more of that?
I really hope so. I think it's just an amazing thing, just the turn of events from, right, so Pope Francis passing on Easter Monday, which, right, he had just blessed the world on Easter Sunday in the liturgies in Rome, and he had just seen our vice president the day before, these kind of big profile, like J.D. Vance had been in the Vatican talking to Pope Francis, then all of a sudden it's just, okay, now he's, we pray for him, and it just, his passing was in some ways as sudden. I remember my wife came into our room at 7 a.m, like Pope Francis passed away. It kind of hit me like a wall a little bit.
Imagine those people that saw him waving from the Pope mobile, the day before.
Yep, exactly. But now we have, right, I never would have thought I'm a little bit of a nerd about this kind of stuff because I work in it, and I sometimes I eat, breathe, and sleep it a little bit as the church, just the life of the church. And
during times like this, we all become nerds.
Yeah. Sure. So I was just blown away because I've been listening to all the podcasts and reading a lot of articles and catching up on who the cardinals are, because this is one of those things. It's like you don't necessarily think about the cardinals until it's time to think about them. It's time to think about who could this be, and he wasn't on my list of predictions at all. I think he was off everybody's list. But funny story. We were actually out on the islands. We were out on a parish visit, so we're out. We have a parish on Put-in Bay, and then we got one on Kelly's Island.
Aren't you supposed to save those for like July and August?
I know, right? We should. Seriously, we missed opportunity. But we were out talking to the deacon there, who takes care of the church there and does a fantastic job. We just love being out there. But we were there, and so with bad reception, we're trying to, all of a sudden we're sitting down to lunch, and we hear, the white smoke, but the radio's in and out. We're in the car afterwards and driving around trying to figure out who this guy was. So it's kind of buzzing. You have static, and then I just heard static, and then somebody said American, and it was some more static. I was like, oh my gosh, there's no way. There's no way. Like, is it Cardinal Dolan? Is it, all these big these names of the cardinals I know? I didn't know Prevost. I had no idea. So it was pretty incredible. But when we got back, of course, on the ferry back, we're trying to get internet service so we could look up who this guy is and read some stuff about him. But the fact that he's American, the fact that he was born and raised in a little house near Chicago, just outside of Chicago, for about 4 hours from here. So
now worth about $1 million.
I know. Seriously, they took that. You see, the house was on the market at the time, and they immediately took it off. I think it was up for $250,000 for $250,000, and then they took it off, and now they're auctioning it. I don't know how much it's going to go for.
Let's hope they donate the money to the church. But anyway,
I would hope so. Yeah, but right. So he's got this little house in suburb of Chicago. The parish where he grew up is now closed. There's a kind of a interesting parallel there or maybe a prophetic thing of the church is kind of decrepit. I've seen some pictures of his old parish, which is, it was sold, it was deconsecrated. So it's no longer a Catholic church. It's kind of old and dusty, and pews are all gone, and just some symbolism. I wonder if over time that'll be, revamped and reopened and maybe made into some kind of a pilgrimage site. And
yeah, that'd be good.
So just anyway, a Midwest Pope, I get excited about that. But I think it ties in, to come back to your question about evangelization. I think we had a great event, as a side that will tie in. We had a great event a few weeks ago with a bunch of parish leaders, pastors, parish staff, and it was called On Mission, an Introduction to Relational Evangelization. Basically, the idea was, how do you evangelize people over time? Because most people don't get evangelized just like that, right? It doesn't usually come from a single conversation or a single sort of silver bullet. Well, I said the exact perfect thing, and now my friend is going to become Catholic, right?
Yeah, there's no evangelization silver hammer, is there?
Right. It doesn't usually work that way. Sometimes if God wants it, but usually it's gradual. So the idea is that everybody, when they are on the road to conversion, they go through 5 thresholds. And a lot of people, Sherry Waddell has a famous book about this, Forming Intentional Disciples, which a lot of people have read, especially in the church world. But those steps, and I've got them pulled up here so I don't get them out of order, but you have essentially, the first step is trust. So a lot of people, if you're going to become Catholic, you need to first, or even Christian, you have to be able to have some kind of a trusting relationship with a Christian to begin with. Because if Christians just are kind of they're this over there thing, and I think, aren't those the weird people who do such and such a thing, or tragically, right, aren't those the people, it's been over the last several decades, right, those are the people with all the sexual abuse scandals, so I don't trust them, or I don't go, right, so there's can be this real damage of trust, right? But that's the first stage, is you have to have someone trust a Christian before they even think about becoming a Christian, right? So trust, you go to curiosity, so you start to ask questions. After curiosity is openness, so you're not just curious, but you're actually open to, maybe this could be for me, right? And then you have the actual act of seeking after God, right? You're asking the deep questions. You're really wanting, you're trying on maybe little life changes towards the gospel. And then the fifth stage is actually the full conversion. Of not saying you're done, but that's when you enter the church, is where you say, okay, I've been curious, I've been open, I've asked my questions, I've tried on the changes, and now I'm going to, I'm choosing discipleship, right? So I think as a nation, we are somewhere, everybody's at their own stage, but culturally, I feel like I said, the scandal set us back a lot. There's been a lot of distrust kind of formed over the decades, and we're almost in that like trust and curiosity stage in a lot of ways. But I see Pope Leo XIV as maybe a really beautiful, and I hope a really beautiful kind of step in the right direction, as far as people looking at the Pope and saying, he's a Cubs fan, right? Or I'm sorry, he's not a Cubs fan. I misspoke. He's a White Sox. He's a White Sox. Sorry, Pope Leo. Don't call.
That's what they first reported.
If you're listening, but yeah, so he's White Sox fan. He's from Midwest in America, right? This sort of idea of like, the Pope is not just some foreign figure who speaks English as his third or fourth language, but he's a son of the United States in some ways, and he also spent obviously so much time in South America. He spent time in Europe. He's really a man of the world. But just to increase that idea of trust, like maybe there is something there. Maybe this guy seems like a down home kind of guy that I could actually like have a good conversation with, and is not so distant. So I'm hoping that maybe kind of nudge us maybe toward the trust, and even maybe into the curiosity stage, but we'll see.
Very, very good. Now, I follow a number of people on, I guess I always want to say Twitter, but I guess it's X. Yeah. And it's mostly news and commentary and things like this, although quite a few, I get a lot of representation with the church affiliation, people that are affiliated through the church. But one individual in particular was just the election of the new pope. Not really sure, he didn't really say, but it was at that time, it fueled his interest. He's a Baptist. And he just stated, he says, this has been on my heart for a while. He says, I think I might want to become Catholic.
Yeah.
Let me know what you think about this.
Yeah.
And I think it was just the activity of the election of the Pope, but quite possibly the fact that he was American. And again, he wasn't very specific, but it was just that in itself was a form of evangelization for this gentleman. I mean, he's a faithful Christian, but he realized that he was lacking in his faith, and he looked to the Catholic Church, and I just thought that was amazing.
Yeah. Oh, it's incredible. I mean, I've heard a lot of people talk about the conclave as sort of like, is like every news station, everybody has an opinion about, was like tuned in to watch the smoke, even Catholic or not Catholic or even not Christian. It's just there's a fascination there that's just incredible. And the Gen Z slang is main character energy. It's like everybody's looking at you like right. So Christ is the main center. He's the main character of history, and the church, and the Pope as the vicar of Christ is kind of in some way he's in that same mold. So everybody's looking at the Pope, even if I've heard so much from Protestants similarly on X and just in different commentary videos of like, I'm not Catholic, but like, this is really interesting to me. Like, I want to learn more. And I think the Google searches for how to become Catholic, I think skyrocketed. I heard by over 200% in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
It's just like, whether that lasts or not, but it's like this
lends
spike
to
of interest.
That curiosity stage that you see the truth or the potential for truth. There's a lot of things that are pricking somebody's conscience at that point, and they're looking at, like you said, the Google searches, and of course there was a lot of misunderstanding about the conclave. They think that this is some sort of a personality thing, like they're, get some presidential election going on behind closed doors. And a lot of people took that opportunity to say, hey, this is nothing like that, and it gives people an opportunity to learn about what the church has done over the centuries to produce a new pope, when necessary.
Right. And all these traditions, right, these deep with even the smoke and the particular, the extra omnes, right? They're speaking the Latin. They're saying everybody out, and you're watching the cardinals process in and they're chanting together. And it's like this beautiful, this mystery of the Catholic Church. I feel like is so. There's just, we've talked about this when I've been here before, but just the transitory nature of modern culture is really hard on people. I think how it's like. You're on X and people are talking about a new thing every single day. Yeah. If not every hour. Right?
Yes.
The conversation, it changes and changes and changes. And you could be really passionate about something, but then guess what? Tomorrow everybody's forgotten about it and they're on to the next thing.
They moved on to something
else.
And
there's something so inhuman about that, and it doesn't let us really sit and ponder and build a foundation on something. And so we're finding this with Gen Z especially. Is this return to faith now? We're seeing these trends of Gen Z, not in overwhelming tidal wave numbers yet, but I think it could get there because there's this renewal of interest in Christianity from Gen Z, which is, millennials all think, well, we're the last we're so secular and everybody's just going to get more and more secular from here on out, and atheism won. And this is kind of the message that I grew up with. Yeah, so I'm 34. I grew up in the 90s and early 2000s. That was kind of the message, right? It's like, well, everybody's going to be atheist 20, 30 years from now. And this is just not the case, right? We're seeing this uptick. I think the mystery of the faith and the solid rock of tradition of saying, what's the deal with that smoke? What's the deal with the guys in the red hats chanting, what I thought was a dead language, right?
Right.
Like nobody speaks that. Like, what is this thing?
Yeah.
Oh, it's actually thousands of years old. And nothing I've ever interacted with is thousands of years old.
Right.
Like not even the country that I live in is that old. Like not even close, right? So there's this depth and a rock solid sort, even if you don't get it, none of us get it fully, right? It's still mysterious to people who are even inside it. But yeah, there's something really attractive there.
So I've never really been able to fully accept the term post-Christian society. I mean, we were all told we're in the post-Christian society. Yeah. I don't think we've lost it all yet, And I think, like you, I'm hopeful. I see, more, I guess, of a bright future ahead than a dark future.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, our guest here, Nathan Maurer, the Parish Life Coordinator for the Department of Discipleship and Family Life for the Diocese of Toledo. And, of course, with Faith with Reasons, we love to find out, not only what the church teaches, but why they teach it. And I think, as you mentioned, it kind of alluded to, we're learning a lot about the Catholic faith now that maybe we didn't know before. How often do you get to witness something like the election of a pope and all the mystery that surrounds that, and to hear him take the name of Pope Leo the 13th,
right?
And then you kind of learn more about him, and then you kind of learn about the new guy, based on that as well.
Yeah. No, I think that's been fascinating. I've listened to a couple podcasts recently about just sort of the Catholic response to artificial intelligence, especially, and kind of the Catholic moment in just technology and the revolution that we're in, because some people have described this as a new industrial revolution, right? Where we have Leo the 13th, so he was in the late 1800s. A lot of people, our research, I'm sure his Google searches have gone way up in the last couple of weeks too, of who is this guy, right? Why did our Leo choose his name? And so Leo the 13th was right around the Industrial Revolution, and he wrote so many things. He's one of the fathers of modern Catholic social teaching. Not the first, but a lot of people falsely claimed he was the first Catholic social. That's not true, but he built a huge foundation. He built upon this massive foundation of Catholic social teaching in the light of the first Industrial Revolution, right? Because he saw how this was degrading the human family, how it was degrading in some ways human work, human labor. He saw people in the factories, for long hours, getting paid so little, getting treated. He saw people essentially being treated as machines and being abused, almost like they're just disposable. And he had a lot to say about that, right? And this is something that he wrote about in Rerum Novarum. Is probably his most famous encyclical. I'm reading through that right now. I've read snippets of it before, but never all the way through. And I'm going back to that. It's fascinating stuff, just how it really is. He's speaking about his own time, but so many of the themes are relevant today, right? We need to avoid a system that dehumanizes us, that breaks up the family. He also saw, right, the Industrial Revolution in a lot of ways was the beginning of sort of this breakdown of the family, right? Because mothers and fathers had never been separated. You had one in the factory, one at home, this was not how agrarian farmer societies worked. The mother, father, and all the children were working, living, breathing, all that together in the same space. Yeah. But now you have the factory, and dad's out of the house all day, and there's now this culture of drinking that dad goes to go. There's a lot of alcoholism in that time where you have the father's going out for a drink instead of coming home to his children, and then that led to the prohibition movement. And it's all this stuff that we just think came out of nowhere. This is sort of the beginning, not the first beginning, but a beginning in that time. And he addressed so much of this. So now with artificial intelligence, what are we going to see with this new industrial revolution, where we already see some people being displaced by computers, essentially, right? You can't make a living in some digital areas. Eventually, I think a lot of computer coding, computer science, all that's going to be
out the window.
The computers are going to be coding themselves. And so where does that leave us? And it's just fascinating. And I'm hoping and praying. And even J.D. Vance had an interview about this a couple weeks ago, just saying that the Catholic Church can provide a moral vision for artificial intelligence. Yeah. Because right now all the governments of the world are just competing over the practicality of it, right? It's a little bit of an arms race, which is a little scary.
It's being used for power,
right?
Yeah, it's being used for power, and that's the investment, because we're looking at China, and we want to have it before China does, and it's purely for a power match, really.
Yep. In a similar way to the atomic bomb, right? It's who can get it the fastest, because and who cares how much damage it might do? We just need to have it before the other guy,
right?
And so there's this power struggle going on, and my hope and prayer is that Leo can guide that discussion, right?
Seems like he's the perfect man in the perfect time for that. He's already addressed AI, and we'll hear a lot more, I'm sure. We're going to take a little break here. Faith with Reasons with Nathan Maurer, Shayne Stanfield, and yours truly, Ron Finn, here from the studios of Annunciation Radio. We'll take this little break, come right back, and continue this fascinating discussion. Stick around.
Hello, I'm Sister Virginia Welsh from St. Martin de Porres Catholic Church in the Padua Center. You're listening to Catholic Radio right here in the Diocese of Toledo. This is Annunciation Radio. Thank you for listening.
Have you ever wondered about church teaching, what's happening in our Diocese of Toledo, how to respond to challenges to your faith? Bishop Daniel E. Thomas takes time each week to answer your questions on the Bishop's Corner, and he wants to hear from you. Submit your questions at artoledo.com, on our app, or email to bishop@annunciationradio.com. Include your name and parish or town, and listen for his answer on the next show.
Thank you to Isabel Financial Services for their underwriting support. They offer a full range of personal and business services, including financial and retirement planning, investments, key person life and disability insurance, and 401k plans. Isabel Financial Services can be reached at 419-535-1236, located at 2346 North Reynolds Road, Toledo. Securities offered through Sigma Financial Corporation, member FINRA SIPC. Isabel Financial Services is independent of Sigma Financial Corporation.
A common charge atheists level at Christians is that their faith is blind. That's to say, their belief is without evidence. How is a Christian to respond? Well, first, Christianity doesn't demand that someone believe without evidence. For example, John writes in John 20:31, Jesus' signs are written that you may believe. John sees his testimony of Jesus' miracles as sufficient evidence to merit rational belief by those who couldn't see him perform the signs. Second, the Church takes evidence as that which is personally verified. But if that were the only evidence worthy of belief, well, then we would have to reject the practice of science, since we can't personally verify every scientific conclusion made prior to us. But that's absurd. So the charge that Christian faith is blind faith is unfounded, and thus not a reason to reject Christianity. I'm Carlo Broussard with the ready reason for Catholic Answers, Catholic.com.
Now, back to Faith with Reasons here on Annunciation Radio.
Hey, welcome back here. Shayne Stanfield with Ron Finn, and today we're blessed to have in studio with us Nathan Maurer. He serves as a Parish Life Coordinator here at the Diocese of Toledo. He's on the team for Parish Strategic Planning and Evangelization, which is part of the Department of Discipleship and Family Life of the Diocese of Toledo. And we were previously discussing AI. And our newest pope, obviously, Leo the 14th, haven't taken the name from Leo the 13th. I don't know if he's really come right out and admitted this, but there's been a lot of people that have speculated, if I understand correctly, that it might be AI is the intention here, because we are looking at quite frankly, another industrial revolution that's going to be taking place. And I'm not sure anybody really understands the ramifications of this, because as we race toward somebody that gets the biggest and best platform, we're really in uncharted territory when it comes to the economic consequences. I mean, obviously there's going to be new business that will be generated out of this, but nobody knows what that's going to amount to.
Right. We're
going to have a lot of people that have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in education and software engineering and programming and all of these things that are now going to be done by a machine.
Yeah.
And I think they already are. I think there are a lot of people that have been walked out of a job because of this technology.
Sure. Yeah. I think he's uniquely it's just so cool how God works, because Robert Prevost, who's now Leo the 14th, he actually got his degree in math at Villanova. Mm-hmm. So he's a math guy, which is I've seen people on X. It's like, we got a math pope. Like, this is so interesting, right? So he's a math guy. And he's a canon lawyer. He has multiple degrees in canon law. So he's he's a logic guy. Like, he's very much he's from his education, you can say, okay, he's a guy who likes systems, he likes order, he likes, and we'll see what all that looks like in his actual governing. He's a thinker, and which is just fascinating. I think that's we're in good hands, I hope, with all of that. But yeah, the artificial intelligence is I don't think we're going to know until we're in the midst of it. I do think it has the chance, the good or the bad chance to really mix things up, and we'll see where that goes. But
and it's obviously built by man, so I think that's our first biggest problem, right?
Yeah.
Because we're gonna build into it all of our own. We're gonna build sin into it. It'll be very much deficient in so many areas.
Yeah,
and to depend on something like that, I've heard, and I've even taken the position. Personally, I've thought about it. It's not necessarily a hardcore belief of mine, but you have to look at this thing and the potential of it being one of many antichrists that we've seen in the past. What is this going to amount to? I mean,
Sure.
At some point, this is going to control humans.
Yeah.
This is going to steer the human race in so many different ways, and none of it good. Again, we're the ones that we've built this thing.
Yep.
And if it's being used for power, it's going to be used against us.
Yeah, whether we realize it or not. And I think there's a lot of discussion about just who's the one who gets to teach the AI what it believes, right? And right now it's because it's not its own thing. I think there can be this misconception that, like, oh well, if it talks and if it types and if it looks like and sounds like a human being. I don't know if you saw the new Google video AI just came out. I think yesterday was released, where now the AI can use human voices, and you can make it say whatever you want. So you have, even in just the last 24 hours, you've had YouTube just flooded with fake news of people literally making most of it for a joke, right? And you can kind of see, okay, well, that's AI. But if you didn't know, it's going to get better and better, where you literally have newscasts of people saying, this thing just happened, when it's totally fake.
Wow.
And it looks and it feels and it sounds completely real. It's like, what are we, like, what era are we entering where you already really couldn't trust things that you found on the internet, or you shouldn't, at least.
Right. But
we're entering like a whole new era of that, where you could even watch a video. There was actually a YouTube channel called Homilies, something like Homilies by, or Messages from Pope Leo. And it was totally fake, totally AI voice, sounded just like him, of Pope Leo homilies, saying whatever they wanted him to say.
Right.
And it was almost 100 video. It got struck down. YouTube took it down pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But like, this is scary stuff. Like,
that is what scares me, because with something like this, I think the first wave is going to be people playing around.
Yep.
Yes.
And it's going to be all kinds of pranks and all kinds of ways to trick people and so forth. And hopefully we'll settle into something that, it develops and you find some good in it.
Well, that's...
We're going to have to face it and embrace it one way or another.
Right. I'm sure people felt the same way when, the factories came along and all of a sudden all of society got turned on its head. And people didn't see that coming. I don't think we're going to necessarily see it coming either. But our faith doesn't change, obviously, and the truth doesn't change. But how are we going to, and who's going to lead sort of the moral vision? And I think that is up to the church for sure.
I just shared with Ron right before the program. My sister sent a couple of animations, AI generated animations from still photographs that they're still mind boggling. But she says, this is pretty cool, or is this pretty creepy? But one photograph was a childhood picture of my father with his two younger siblings, late 1930s, animated.
Yep.
And my grandfather's World War II Army portrait, animated.
Wow.
And and that's wild, because if you wouldn't known that was that wasn't taken out of some sort of a what do they have, like the old movie, the 8mm, the videos, if
Sure.
you didn't know it was one of those, you would think that it's original.
Right.
And it's amazing, because you got a computer that's animating just a still picture, and yet you don't know if you might get somebody that recognizes even a facial movement that they might recall, or think that that's that how they behaved.
Yeah.
It's just mind-boggling.
Yeah, like a computer can act so much like a human being. And that's my worry with this from a Catholic perspective, is that people, the better and more intelligent seeming these machines become, I do think there's a real danger of us coming to think that they are sentient in some ways, or they are like us in some ways, when really all they're doing is imitating, and they're basically super tools and really, really, really good at imitating human beings. But we know on a faith level, they can never have what human beings have. They can never have the image and likeness of God. They'll never have an original thought. They don't have the spark of divine life in them. But could they fake it really, really well? I think that they can. And I think a lot of people, especially in sort of the atheist and new agey world, is like, people are hungering for an intelligence that's higher than themselves, but they don't want God, right? Because God will tell me what to do.
Right.
But this might take the place of God for a lot of people, right? Well, AI knows everything. I just ask AI, there's people I've heard using this almost as like a therapist. Like, you're having a problem in your life and you just, I'll ask Google or ask Grok or my AI of choice, and they'll tell me, I've tested it out a little bit. Like, it'll give you like life advice. It'll give you, it's like, you could almost treat this like it's your God in a box, right? But but it's absolutely not, and it could be telling you things that are completely false, right?
Yeah. And what about these? You've got let's say the guys out at Catholic Answers. You've got all these apologists. They've got literally thousands and thousands of hours of video, and it would be so easy to take their image and their voice and run it through one of these advanced forms of AI, and they could be tweaking something just a little bit and end up steering somebody, and that can go out on the internet, and how would they even know?
Which kind of brings us to, your work with the Ministry to Healthy Parishes. Parishes are embracing technology. We're seeing all kinds of ways that parishes are evangelizing using the latest technologies. Has that come up yet at the parish level? Are people asking about effective ways to use AI, or are they already experimenting with it?
Yeah, I think the discussion hasn't come up in any of my coaching yet. I think a lot of parishes are, frankly, they're at the level of just kind of getting the hang of very simple, Some places are amazing at website and social media use. Some places don't have much social media presence at all. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of where we start is just having a social media presence in general. Mm-hmm. So the AI stuff is a little bit more in the weeds, but I think honestly, as it gets better, there are ways to use it well. I mean, we use it at the pastoral center every once in a while. If I have a giant chart of data of let's say a survey response where it's hundreds and hundreds of people have said all these things, I'll read through all of it, but I'll also put it through the AI and say, like, what are the trends here? And it'll kind of pick out, the juicy stuff out of this, hundreds and hundreds of responses. And honestly, it's useful, right? It's not all bad. Mm-hmm. And I'm not using it for any kind of immoral work, or I'm not using it to imitate a human or to deceive someone or anything right.
And that's the key.
So, right. It's just using to help me, kind of like a really advanced Google search, to help me sort through a lot of things.
It'll probably do that in a couple of seconds.
Well, exactly. It's pretty incredible, right? Yeah. But so it's not all bad. I don't want to say that, but at a parish level, I think what I'll always say with social media and with just technology in general is you never want anything to live on social media. You don't want anything to live on the internet. If you have a group that's just virtual, for example, I would always encourage, okay, bring that into person. Like, where can we get that virtual group in person together to have a pizza and to actually study the Bible on a piece of paper, right? The actual physical Bible, instead of all on their screens or Zoom or whatever it might be. So the technology can serve, but the beauty of this, I've thought about this a lot recently, of the beauty of the Catholic faith is that, and specifically the sacraments of the Catholic faith. This is something that the other Protestant denominations don't have to the degree that we have, right? Some higher Protestants have a sacramental theology. They don't have the true presence, but they believe certain things about communion, or about they might do other kind of external things like the sacraments, but the Catholic Church is the only one with the 7 sacraments in the way that they are. And those are physical things that can only be done in person, right? You can never hear a confession over Zoom. Even during COVID, you cannot do it. It's not allowed, right? You must be in person with a priest actually saying words. Those sound waves enter their ears, and then they speak back to you, and you're hearing, right? It's this. The physicality of being Catholic is pretty amazing, right? We use oil and water and bread and wine, and all these things become signs of the divine, right? The true presence of Christ, his presence in our lives. So you can't digitize that. Yep. You can never fully digitize that. So while some Protestant and lower Protestant churches might be, everything's virtual, right? You can go to church virtually. You can do your Bible study virtually. You can do everything you want to do virtually, and you never have to step foot in the church building. Catholicism can never be that way. Mm-hmm. We can invite people through the internet, but it has to always have the end point of people actually being together in the flesh, right? That's incarnation. That's Christ. That's what Christ did, right? He came in the flesh to us. He didn't come as a digital program. He didn't come as right. I think there will be digital programs that do pretend to be God in some ways, which is kind of terrifying, like what that will look like. But we can always be assured that will never be the true
part of the church,
right? Yeah. And that will right. We can never take that step, obviously.
And that's what we were faced with that, during COVID, the virtual mass. Attending a virtual mass is not attending mass,
right?
That's something, like you said, it has to be done in person,
right?
And why would you want to?
You can't smell the incense or the stream.
Yeah.
Right. Careful, don't give him ideas.
Yeah, you're right.
Scratch and sniff incense. Yeah. Take it home with you.
So, is there? Do you find that there's been more of an interest with these parishes seeking your services more in line with hey, we've got something here that we want to get out, and when they want to grow their communities, but they're going to be calling your office and looking for ideas. There's got to be a thirst for this, and it should be structured in some way, and that's where you come in.
Yeah, Yeah, I think absolutely. We have parishes, especially after our event a couple weeks ago. Like I said, we were talking about evangelization and how to build relationships, and I had a couple parishes reach out after that and just say, "Hey, how can we bring this to our own neighborhood?" And I think there's absolutely a hunger. I think the church everywhere, our diocese is no exception, but is sort of realizing, okay, we need to be thinking about this in a new way. We need to be evangelizing in ways that we might not have thought of before, and that's not a scary like. I think people can look at it in a scary way. That's an exciting thing. I really think this is exciting of saying, okay, like the Lord will never change. The truths of the Catholic faith will never change. The way that we communicate them, it will adapt to the ways that the world speaks, right? Not that we take on every mannerism of the world, because then we can end up losing ourselves. You have to be careful. But as long as the truth is, we're not ashamed of speaking the truth. We can and we should go out to, as Pope Francis was so fond of saying, out to the peripheries, right, and go into the places where we wouldn't think to go. I think so. The hunger's there, and I think the problem, it's a good problem to have in some ways, is that so many people, they've been so divorced from religion, they've been so separated from religion. Gen Z, a lot of them were raised with no religion at all.
Right,
they're one of the first generations in forever that was raised. In a lot of ways as nuns, right? NONES, that religiously unaffiliated.
Yeah, we'll just let them pick when they grow up and get older.
Sure. But what's crazy and what's beautiful, and I think this is just proving the Catholic faith so much more deeply, is that they're not content there. There was this whole idea, like I said, I grew up kind of in the 90s, early 2000s. There was this idea that like, well, the default of human nature is just sort of being without any beliefs at all, right? It's sort of it's just atheism, or even better, it's agnosticism, where it's like, well, I'm open to maybe there being something, but like we can never really know, and so I can just like kind of make my own truth and do my own thing. But what people didn't count on is that just leaves you so empty. There's such an emptiness there, right? It's like that's exhausting, actually, too. It's like to wake up every day and like have to make up the meaning of your own life. Like you just have to invent it from like nothing. How exhausting that is, and how we're just not wired for that. We can't do that. It's literally like you go crazy. You'll drive yourself crazy. Yeah. And you see that happen to new people, right? That I think in a huge way that's where the transgender movement has come from. That's where a lot of this stuff has come, because well, if life really has no meaning, then why not cut off healthy pieces of my body? Why not carve myself up? And why not, just totally try to get away from reality altogether? It's like this is the logical endpoint. If there's really no God, then none of this matters at all. And people are finding that to be a very, very depressing place to live, and to be, right? And there's this despair that sets in. So what's really, I mean, that's a very bleak picture, but the good side of this is that the hunger is coming back something fierce. I think there's a spiritual hunger that like people just didn't count on the strength that it would come back with. You have all these Gen Z people going back to church. Yeah. You have people like Joe Rogan, apparently he's been spotted at a church recently.
Oh, I know,
yes. It's like, so just regularly, apparently.
Yeah. Right. Who's like, he's one of the people who you would, even 3-4 years ago, he'd be the first one to make fun of Christianity. And now he's had multiple Christians on. I'm not saying he's anywhere close, but like we pray for him. But it's like you have these huge monolithic cultural voices that are all of a sudden saying, hey, like I've been living this way and I'm not finding what I thought I would find. Maybe there's something deeper.
Well, I think what you said earlier is really important, how exhausting it is to live life like that every day, and particularly when people become profoundly aware. I mean, at some point the light bulb comes on that happiness itself is so shallow, and you're chasing these things that don't fulfill you, and they'll bring you pleasure after a few a few days or whatever. But generally, that kind of lifestyle is very it is very shallow, and it could be very tiring because you're just bouncing from one thing to another.
Yep. Even if they're good things, it doesn't even have to be necessarily sinful things.
Right.
Some people do bounce. Many of us bounce, right, from sinful thing to sinful thing, or from pleasure to pleasure, right? But it doesn't even, you can even get to some days where you're like, oh, I've spoken to people who are like, yeah, I'm married, I have a couple kids, like we go on nice vacations. It's like all these are good things. It's like, and I still like, there's just something missing.
Right.
I don't know what it is. Like my life is perfect. Like I should be totally happy, and I'm just not, right? And it's like, that's such a proof of like, okay, we're not.
Or you even have that, and I've heard this phrase before, and I don't know where somebody just used it, but it's the shallowness of happiness, because they admit, well, I am happy, but it's not fulfilling. The joy is missing in that happiness. There's no underlying joy, and I think that's where people are really struggling, because they get the two of them confused all the time. How can you be joyful in suffering? How can you be joyful in the midst of a crisis?
Right.
But it is possible, and it's that underlying. It's, I guess, what keeps you on even keel, all the time. It certainly enriches and makes happiness more worthwhile. But you can't really have anything lasting if that happiness isn't coupled with joy.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
Faith with Reasons, and Nathan Maurer in studio with us now. He's Parish Life Coordinator for the Diocese of Toledo, and we've been talking a lot about hunger, and you see that on so many different levels. And when big events happen and we're in the news, the church is in the news like it is, it seems like that's a little tug on the sleeve a little bit for a lot of folks, and especially youth. I mean, I'm seeing a lot of youth coming to our Adoration Chapel. And coming to Mass. We're seeing a lot of young families coming to Mass now. So when parishes are really kind of expanding the parishioner base, if you will, or welcoming, being attractive to these young people who are, in fact, hungry, what are they looking for when they're coming? And how do you advise parishes to prepare for an influx of new parishioners and not, displace some of your older parishioners, for example? And how do you get them involved?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's going to depend on every parish. Every community is so different, and everybody has their specific challenges and the gifts of their parish and the strengths and weaknesses and all these things. But I think it's important to remember, that like we said, that the faith doesn't change. The ways and the things that we're attracted to in the faith might be different depending on who we are. Some people might be so very, very attracted to, for example, like the Catholic social teaching that Pope Leo XIII and now Pope Leo XIV, are focusing on. Other people might be very attracted to the moral theology, right? I think a lot of young people are coming to the church because they're looking for a moral foundation that's not going to dissolve underneath them, that gives them a rock to stand on. I also think that, so if we can come together, though, because the truth of the faith doesn't change, and all those things, whatever part of the faith we're most attracted to, it all applies to us, right? Whatever our biggest interest is. I'm a big, what has kept me Catholic throughout the years is so many things. Number one, Christ and the Eucharist, but a lot of what I studied in my schooling was moral theology, and it always fascinated me how morality is not just a bunch of rules like it was always sort of presented to me growing up, but morality is really the fulfillment of our desire. Morality is meant to be the fulfillment of all of our desires, right? Like we are actually made for a purpose, and when we are moral, when we act well, that's actually the flourishing of our self. It's not the limit to our freedom. And so that brings me back to these I think a lot of young people are coming into the faith because they're attracted by these sort of unmoving, unshakable things that are so different from the transitory mile-a-minute culture that we're in, the social media culture. So I think the more that parishes can lean in and not be embarrassed. This is what I've seen, and I've talked to a couple people on X about this too, of just the era of kind of watered down and sort of being shy about your faith and your belief. I just think that's out of style now. It's going out of style really quickly.
That's good news.
And maybe it's been out of style for a while. We just haven't noticed. But I think Gen Z, they'll as you say, based. If something's based, that's a very good thing, right? I don't want to. I'm sounding like a millennial here, or they call me a boomer. Even I'm not a boomer. Not yet. They would still call me a boomer, but. It's anybody older than them.
Yeah.
But yeah, you've got this idea of based, which is so interesting that's the positive word, right? If something is based, that means it's good. Like that's a positive thing. And based means it has a foundation. That's what they're saying. It's founded. Okay. It's based on something. It's standing on something that's strong. It's not just wishy-washy. It's not just up here. Whoa, woo, like I'm just making stuff up. No, this is based.
Yeah.
It's got a foundation. I thought that's fascinating. That's the word that Gen Z uses to say that something's positive. It's like how much more based, as in founded, as in ancient, steady, unmoving, is the Catholic Church, right? Built on the rock of Peter, built on Christ's sacrifice, right? So if we can present the unchanging pieces of the church, the traditional, the ancient, I think that's paradoxically, I really think that there's a misconception that young people just they don't like that old stuff. We need to imitate the culture around us. We need to make it more entertaining. We need to make it more shiny, more flashy, more like lights and laser shows. And a lot of lower Protestant denominations have gone in that direction, right? I went to a Protestant friend of mine invited me to a church. This was a couple of years ago, but here in Toledo, and it's a church in one of the strip malls near Franklin Park Mall. And nothing against them, but the church service was essentially a concert. You had smoke and lasers, and they literally sang a song by Imagine Dragons, who's a secular rock band, right? That was their song for the day. It was "You Make Me a Believer," right? They baptized a little bit. But they're singing a secular song, right? And it's just like, this is so interesting, because it's like it's just a total. If I didn't know this was a Christian church, I could just, it's just kind of a B quality concert. Like, it wasn't even a great concert. It was just sort of like, this is kind of an average musical. But young people especially, are wanting to go deeper into the ancient, into something that doesn't change. So that's the teachings, right? Whether that's in the moral teachings, whatever that might be. Don't be afraid to. I've had people say like, what do you do? What do you do when you have to tell young people the bad news? I was like, and this is a real conversation. What do we do when we have to tell engaged couples? This was in my marriage ministry. When we have to tell engaged couples the bad news. And I was like, what's the bad news? I don't understand. That they're not supposed to sleep together before marriage. I was like, you're the people telling them about the Catholic faith, and you think this is bad news? Like, this is the gift of marriage, is that we are meant to save ourselves for one another in marriage, and this total self-gift is actually beautiful. This is freeing. This is amazing. I actually had a couple acquaintances in Denver who came into the church because of the church's teaching on contraception. They weren't scared away by it. They said, no, it sounds like you really know what you're talking
attracted
about.
To that truth.
I want that, right? And you're not shy about it. Like, for a lot of people, it's like that's crazy for them that they'd be attracted to the hard teaching. But that's where we're at. So don't be afraid of that, and don't be afraid of beauty is how I'll end it. End that thought. Don't be afraid of the beauty of the faith is bringing people back in droves.
Yeah, and it's one thing to welcome, and we've seen this happen so often too. You want to be the welcoming place, and come as you are, but we don't leave them there. That's the whole point.
Absolutely, yeah.
Nathan Maurer, it's been a quick hour.
Very quick.
For sure.
Always.
Thank you so much for all you do for the Diocese of Toledo, for our parishes, and for our listeners here this afternoon. Nathan Maurer, Parish Life Coordinator for the Diocese of Toledo, and they can contact you there, right?
That's right. Anytime. nmaurer@toledodiocese.org.
Okay, Maurer.
That's right.